Us on a Friday. Welcome to Informative Fridays. It's our last one of May, and we'll be talking about BI FSM dimensional security. And I'll turn it over to Brian.
Yeah, thanks again for attending, everyone. For all of you out there that don't know us or now you're seeing Nordic ERP, which was previously Bales. This has been happening for the last 2 years, but officially, like last month, we transferred everything over. So we now are Nordic ERP. But what that means is being part of Nordic ERP, we still have the foundation of people that have been around us. We started back in '97, so we were involved with over 100 clients in the U.S. and Canada. 70% of our business is healthcare. We currently have over 80 plus clients at our that we use for resources, and our industries that we use are healthcare, retail, finance services, hospitality, manufacturing, public sector, and utilities. Steve, I think the next slide it'll touch a little base by some of the positive things that happen now that we merged with Nordic. The big piece with Nordic side now is the stuff they can help with industry thought, leadership, and advisory with their performance improvement piece. That takes us over to that digital transformation. It's all going to be platform agnostic with technologies. I believe the next piece is where Bales, now Nordic ERP, comes into. Your implementation and support people, that would be us. But then Nordic has a large piece of managed services that we like to promote and use. So that's something we can provide moving forward. So I think that, Steve, that's where I introduce you guys. We have Steve Sinisi on our call today. He's a solution architect for the Finance ERP, and John Simpson, he's the principal consultant for finance. As far as this disclaimer, we keep that up there just to keep people informed. But I think now we can get in and start into our presentation.
Sure. How's it going, everybody? Name's John Simpson. I'll be one of the presenters today, kind of walking through, and Steve as well is going to be. We'll both be kind of tackling some of the concepts in this process. So this particular Informative Friday is relating to BI security. BI, as you know, is the the business intelligence, the reporting function that that Infor provides that's outside of FSM, right? It's a different module, and there's a way of securing that system down to only allow allowable dimensions for certain users. Does not apply to everybody. So this is going to focus around the high level concepts of BI security, and then setting up that, as well as a little bit of FSM security, but mainly around BI. So first piece is going to be really an overview of BI security and what it does and how it works. Then we're going to talk a little bit about each step and how it is actually set up, and then which is going to be including the cubes, setting up the custom roles if you need custom roles. We're going to be talking about when you have that custom roles built or those users, setting up the BI security for that, as well as applying that security once done to the users themselves. And then we're going to end it just briefly kind of seeing what that may look like when somebody gets into the system and looks at BI. So just this is BI security. So if you have any questions along the way, please, raise your hand, yell it in the chat. Happy to stop and answer any questions if we can. So first, a little bit about BI security. What it does is it allows you to lock based on your dimensions or multiple dimensions, allows you to lock the visibility for certain users down, not for everybody, but the users you choose to make sure that they can only see the dimensions they're supposed to see. This is optional, which means that I can apply it to some users. I don't need it. If you're an admin level, you're a finance resource, you may not need security, may not want security. Unless you're a finance resource for maybe one company, right? And then you can lock it down for all companies and kind of split it that way. So common uses that I've seen for this, your entity. I have some users that roll up to one company, but not others. I may want to use, entity access. Maybe there's a group of companies that some users are using and not others. You can separate that as well. More common ones that I've seen is really depends on department. So let's say I have a financial hierarchy. I've got a users hierarchy, your managers, your directors, your officer level, you can lock down just the departments that their responsibilities are for using BI security, while leaving the CFO and maybe the CEO and then your finance department not to have that level of security that can see everything. Last but not least, a couple of other ones would be with accounts. Some clients may want just their users just to see the income statement side of accounts. Maybe they just want accounts excluding payroll. If payroll obviously is a very it's a very sticky subject. Depending on the client, they may want payroll locked down completely. Next slide.
Yep. And John, I'll just add on.
Sure.
You talked about some of these most common ones that we see used, but you can actually lock down any of the user dimensions that you have out there. So I know a lot of companies are using a user dimension for location, and that can be done through BI security as well. And then John's going to explain later that security can be done at a summary and a posting level. So we'll walk through some examples there as well.
So a little more kind of drilling down, one level deeper on this, and kind of to what Steve was just saying too, you can lock down one dimension and you can lock down multiple dimensions. I've had clients in the past say, hey, I just want companies locked down. And then I've had other clients say, I want the location, the department, the account, a bunch of levels of lockdown. So you could map each dimension separately using the dimension on a cube and say, hey, turn on cube's dimension security for one. I'm going to lock down the department and then maybe do another one for account, for instance. There's also another option as well is called multi-dimension access cube. So it's actually taking the cube level itself, locking it down, and choosing the multiple dimensions you want to lock down, and then locking that down as well.
Yeah, and I'll give a quick example of the multi-dimension access cube. I think of that as like a combination of posting elements. So if you think about company and department combined, maybe you've got a company 1 and a company 2. And you want to set security for a user to have access to company 1, department 100, and department 200. But for company 2, you only want them to have, let's say, department 300. The best way to achieve that is going to be with a multi-dimension access cube. The number of combinations that you have with multi-dimension access cube can get, exponentially bigger. So I think, you want to be careful about how many dimensions you're linking together there, but it is a good resource if you're trying to get really specific with your security.
Absolutely. So one little kind of side note too, and this is always good, and I'll bring this up a couple times, during the conversation. There's also a thing called FSM security. So the FSM security really starts at the FEG and kind of down. So as you set up your BI security and you're locking down those dimensions in BI, as you know, with drill back and reports, you can actually drill back on the BI reports. It drills all the way down to really the transaction level in FSM. To maintain that level of security, and also both kind of work, at least on the single dimension security with the hierarchies, they work relatively the same. Those are FSM security can be built on hierarchies as well. So going back to that account example, for instance, so if I wanted to lock up accounts themselves, income statement accounts, maybe I'm setting up my BI security on the account level, but then also I'm setting up, in conjunction with that, my income statement, call it like the example here, income statement security. I'm locking down using the hierarchy that you've built already on your chart of accounts. I'm locking down then my account security level as well. So that then prevents, let's say, any users getting into the FSM side, drilling back the transactions, and all of a sudden taking a peek down and, maybe they're looking at the, balance sheet accounts where you don't want them to go. So this is just another kind of way. I would say if you're setting up BI security for a reason, you really should seriously look at FSM security as well, just to make sure that follows it all the way down to the detail level.
Yeah, just to give another example there, a lot of times companies are having department heads in BI FSM for reporting, but they might also be in FSM to look at transactions, to look at AP inquiry screens. And so if you have the security in both places, you're locking them down to just the data that they should be able to see for their area.
Absolutely. So we mentioned this on the last slide too. Everything that works for BI security, BI security and FSM security, that works on dimensions and hierarchies. So, we were talking about the multi-dimension access being multiple dimensions. Using the single dimension example here. So this dimension is set up on the FEG, and the hierarchy that you built, your master hierarchy, or it could be one of the alternate hierarchies. That's going to be then also it's going to show up in BI. As you see the example here, that security for that BI viewer's demo role is then locked down down to just the net income on the BI side. That actually drives your dimensional access, which is really on your dimensions. And depending on the type of security you're using, you can then do what's called a pass through, and we talk a little bit more about that later. But you can do a pass through, which means that, hey, if I got posting dimensions that's under a high, the high level, for instance, net income here, any posting dimensions you add on the single dimension security, it's then going to basically automatically allow those dimensions to be viewed by the user. So the hierarchies you set up drive the FSM, or excuse me, BI security that you're going to be using.
Yeah, and John mentioned, additional hierarchies or using your main reporting hierarchy. You can create a hierarchy specific to security if need be. If your reporting hierarchy doesn't meet the needs for security, it's not, out of the ballpark to create a hierarchy specific for security.
Absolutely, makes it a lot easier. So kind of, keeps skipping ahead to kind of mention what I was talking about last time, to dive a little deeper. So those changes in hierarchies, depending on your security, that automatically adjusts on the BI side too. So if I'm adding a department under a structure, or posting departments, so let's say hey, we got to add a new OR if you're a hospital, or maybe you've got a new accounting department, you can then add that additional department in there. And if you have what's called the pass-through set up, those pass-through dimensions are automatically going to then assign those new posting dimensions to those users. There's not going to be a need to go back and set up that security, for that dimension, because it's already kind of as long as you set it up with the pass-through option on the single dimension security, it's then going to allow that to go through. That said, I would still, if you're completely changing and you have a whole new branch on a hierarchy, I would still take a look at that and make sure that if you're setting a whole new branch up, that hierarchy is still attached in there, just as an aside, because if it's not, if you have somebody that maybe that's split out, you've created a definite split, you may need to set up that custom role and assign that to a new user or to a new role. So it's just kind of as an aside. It may still roll up to, let's say, your CEO, but it may not roll up to, whoever is responsible for that.
Yeah, another note I'll make is that pass-through security, which is really beneficial to maintaining security at summary levels, is not available on the multi-dimension access cubes. So you're really setting security at a one-by-one level, which can get pretty cumbersome if you have a lot of security that you're setting. So it's just something to keep in mind if you're going to use those multi-dimension cubes.
Another thing, and it has to do with custom roles. So there's a few options. So as we were talking about in the beginning, there's the cube access. There's setting the cube access on the, but to do that, you have to have a vehicle to set that up. That could be a user. You could be using a particular user. You could be using a delivered role if you wanted to set up that. However, custom roles allow you to not touch your access to your existing roles, your delivered roles, your BI viewer role, for instance, but it does allow you to, let's say, create, if I have a hierarchy for a department head for, let's say, nursing, and it's a department head for nursing, and they have all the nursing departments under there, that the department head leaves. If I have that security set on the user, I have to go back and then set that user up. So an easy solution for this is to set up a custom role. That role looks and acts exactly like any other BI viewer role, but then you can set the custom access on the role. So if there's any kind of, headcount change, you have somebody leave, move departments, move up, and you hire somebody new, really it's just a matter of assigning that role to the user, and then they get that access that other user already had.
Yeah, and then, with figuring out what custom roles you need and what to call them, it's going to vary organization to organization. I think it's important to look at who's accessing the BI FSM application and then coming up with some type of streamlined process, like John mentioned, for applying the roles to users. So, you might have roles specific to VPs by area, department managers, specific areas like IT and budgeting, and then figuring out who needs to get assigned those different roles.
So just as kind of a lead into the second part of this, which is really how one goes about setting this whole thing up, and just to kind of as a teaser rolling in, there's really 4 steps to this. The first step is you're enabling your cube security. That's going on, whether it's, multi-dimension access cube on the cube level, or whether it's dimension security or multiple dimension security, and you have to go in and turn those cubes on. You got to go set the security on the cube. If you're using a custom role like we were just talking about, you then got to have an IT resource, or like a high level finance user who's doing role setup. Build yourself a custom role, and then you got to then assign that security to the custom role itself. Then when that's done, you roll out the security to the users. And another side note with this too, as you're talking BI security, obviously there's the FSM security question that's always there. Like, do I need to kind of push that farther down, all the way down to the transaction level? And then that's another conversation, another security that needs to be set up and maintained. But it's very similar in some respects.
Yep. And John mentioned this, we're talking a lot about custom roles for applying to users. That's not a requirement. You can use the delivered roles and set custom security on them. You can set security on the users themselves. We just like the approach of using a custom role and being able to apply that role across the organization.
Okay, so now we're going to get into it, right? So first step is really turning on that cube. And so OLAP cubes, which is the online analytical processing cubes, basically what they're used is to summarize the numerical data using the dimensions and hierarchies. So those same dimensions that you have set up in the OLAP cubes have the security set on it. So under the AFM application manager, you can go into cube access, and and you can actually go find the dimension. In this case, as you see the database structure, I looked for the GL chart account cube in this case under GLTOT, and it gives you an option to turn on security. So it's really a flip of a switch, and then building a new cube that creates that enables the security, and then builds the cube for that security that you're going to set your access on. Which means that when you get into the following steps of applying the security, that security is actually applied on this new cube. And so this is kind of where this is the first piece of setup, right? So everything else kind of builds upon this. I would go back, map out the cube security that I'm looking to do, find out the dimensions that you want to set up, or in the case of multi-dimension access cubes, which dimensions I want to combine together, and then kind of roadmap out how this needs to be set up. I think the other pre-work to this, which, as Steve had mentioned earlier, is you may want to set up a security hierarchy for this. That is an easy way of maintaining a hierarchy that's separate than the reporting hierarchy. That is, it may be something where if you have a habit of changing a reporting hierarchy quite a bit, this would probably be a good idea, is to kind of map out what that alternate hierarchy looks like. Because if that is static and it's not going to move around, and your reporting hierarchy is different, then it's probably a good idea to set that up potentially. Also, too, if your hierarchy for your security is very different than what your reporting hierarchy looks up, then it'd be another reason to set that up. So those two things kind of go hand in hand, but the first step really is setting on the access control.
Yep.
So I think this one as a little bit different. This is at the cube level itself. So when setting up multi-dimension access, it's not really set on the dimension. You actually got to go to the cube level. You're going to click on the cube itself. You're going to turn on the access control for enable multi-dimensional access control, and then you're going to pick your dimensions. So you're going to have all your dimensions listed and what combination of dimensions you want to choose. And so that's, you're going to select the dimensions in this cube and then create a new cube at this point.
Yeah, and I'll throw the caution out there again. If you're gonna string a lot of dimensions together, you got to think about the combination of data points that that's bringing in for you to manage. So if you're trying to do company plus department plus account, I mean, it's a huge amount of data points to try to control access to. So I would try to limit it to where you really need that combination lockdown.
Absolutely. So now that I've got the access queue built, then the second step really is building the custom role. And this is a very simple role, by the way. There's not a lot of classes. There's no classes to this role, actually. It looks exactly like a BI viewer role. So if you see the standard BI viewer role, there's no classes to it. It's just basically a standard role. So you can go in and you can get this under security admin and under user management. You go and create a new role, label the role, name it, and then that's really all there is. Creating a new role. And to Steve's point, you can set this up on a user, and you could skip this step altogether if you wanted to update a delivered role to make that cube, to reduce the cube access. But depending on what your security looks like and how many people need security, and if those security is different, then you got to ask yourself, is it best to set it up on the user? Is it best to set it up on the custom role? What do I want to maintain on this? But to me, maybe I'm a creature of habit, but I like the role idea. So it's building a simple role in the system and then and getting it set up, maybe with some sort of a naming convention. So the next step that you're gonna the next step after you get set up, or the same step, the second part of the same step, that is once you create the custom role, is you actually got to go and attach it to the BI FSM application. So if you were to just set this custom role in your user and you go to the roles, the application switcher at the top left of your screen, the 9 box, you'll see that BI doesn't show up there for that user. So what you actually have to do is go into BI and add the new user, or the new role for that matter, into the BI system. And basically what that does is it registers it with that. So when you have that role only, you have that option to click onto the BI system. So it's Go. Sorry, Steve.
I can tell you, John, from personal experience, I've missed this step twice and tried to troubleshoot why the user couldn't access anything in BI FSM. And I think you probably came in and helped me with this step, but it's frustrating if you forget this one.
It is true. And to Steve's point, I have also fought with this quite a bit, and it was because this is literally a very direct search. So if you're looking for that role to attach and you type in BI, and don't forget this, and viewer or any kind of combination, you don't start from the first letter on, you will not find it. And I think Steve had to come to the rescue after probably way too long of me going, why can't I see my role I just built? So but definitely an important part for sure. But yes. So now that you've got your role set up in BI, you've got the role built, the next step really is actually creating the application role for this role. So in BI Application Manager, you actually have to go to application roles. You got to create the application role in the system. What that does is allows you to assign that custom role, assign the permissions for that role. And if you were to poke around and look at the different BI roles, you would see that different roles have different application permissions, and that basically dictates what the user can do using this role. Where I just basically mimic a standard BI viewer role for this, which is really the view app. As you could see, there's like 5 or 6 view options here, and I think I'm choosing 5 or 6 of those view options. I'm not doing any edits. I'm not doing any admin permissions. It's really just view only. So you want to set up the demo role, apply the permissions to that role, and then save it. And then you want to hit that. You can see that little yellow kind of circular thing, and that's gonna basically update that role and get that set up. So that would be the next step to kind of setting this up in the system. Last but not least, once this role is set up, then you got to go and actually go to the user and user groups and register this with the user groups. So you want to click the register and go ahead and register with the user groups. And then once that's done, then you want to go and actually assign the user groups to this role. So what that's doing now is assigning that, it's under FSM, and you go and you can assign that to the role that's in FSM to allow that to kind of work through. So it's just another quick step, but if you don't do it, unfortunately you won't see anything when you're using that role. Okay, now comes the biggie, and this one's where you're going to be actually assigning the security to this role. So this same security would apply to a user, which you would set up in the system, or a delivered role for that matter, if you're changing security. This is where you've got to go in, and whether it's one dimension or multiple dimensions, you've got to edit the security on those dimensions. They give you 7 different options to do so. If you don't do anything and you don't even set up the default permissions any different than what it comes out, every role has that kind of default view on it. You can actually set this to be, I think it's like read only, no access, the default to that, and then you can go in and change it up. But with the default access, you want to go, and what I like to do with a new role, set it at the highest level, do pass through no access for absolutely everything. So I'll do pass through no access, clear all access out of that new user. Then I want to go and set up the new access. So using the example of the single dimension account, I would go through, and the way that I set it up is I say turn off all access, and then I go and I then use what's called the pass through read only access. And I can go and set pass through access at the highest level that I want that user to see, and it's going to push that down through all the other levels. The pass-through access is the access that we talked about earlier that allows you, when you add posting dimensions and you make changes to the system, it automatically adjusts to those changes in the system. It dynamically allows access to the new thing, the new dimensions. Using, the multi-dimension access cube piece, that piece of that bit, you don't get the option to do the pass-through option. You have to set every dimension up, if I'm not mistaken, right, Steve?
Yeah, and then so if you think about defaulting either everything to read access or everything to no access, and then having to go in and pinpoint where that access should exist, can really, it can be a lot of work. So it's, just probably don't want to use multi-dimension access unless you absolutely need it.
Yep, absolutely.
Because that pass-through access will save you a lot of time in maintaining security.
Time and carpal tunnel. Absolutely. Absolutely. So basically BI admins can manage permissions, which set up summaries and posting elements, and it should be visible to a role. And this is kind of what we were saying on the previous one. The pass-through modes will keep that update and keep that, basically keep current any kind of changes on that structure. So I know every company's adding departments, every company's adding accounts. Using the pass-through option is definitely the easiest path of least resistance to go and to actually set that up. Just to kind of reiterate, it makes life a lot easier. So as you can see here, here's the example that we set up for the account. So a little bit at the top, you can see that access cube that we set up for account. We want to drop down and grab that new cube. And when we do so, it's going to give us that GLTOT chart account cube. And then we can see that all the roles that we have set up that have access to BI, those roles are all going to be in here kind of in a nice columnar list format. Can't speak today. And everything, as you can see, like that admin role, that's all defaulted to the default thing, right? So this is what all your roles look like. So we did with this particular role, we went through, did pass through no access for everything, just like the one that's kind of highlighted there. You could see it's the circle with the cross through, or the X through it, or the line through it anyways. And that's actually the no access. And then the PS3 read-only access we set up at net income, that pushed it all down. As you could see, that kind of down arrow is pushing it down, and that over arrow is where those dimensions are kind of getting pushed down too. So that gives us access to everything down to the posting level at that level. So this basically example would be a very basic setup using the chart account and going and set that up.
And then just, one more time to kind of drive home the importance of the pass-through access. If you're adding, an account, let's say in assets, it's a brand new account, it's going to flow through over to BI as part of that asset summary and receive that pass through no access from the summary above it. So you won't have to go in and maintain, every single account that gets added into the chart.
So the last piece of setting up this particular security is to actually go into the BI. The BI, and under the BI application, there's going to be an option to set the dimensions with the security cube. So what I like to do is once I get all the dimensions set up, I go in and check those dimensions that have the security cube. That way to make sure that the BI reports are kind of operating correctly with the secure access. That does not mean, however, if you don't have security set up on on the BI access, it's not going to work. So it's an optional. You need that set up for security, but if you don't have security limitations on your role and your user, like an admin user, this won't apply to you, and you'll still see everything. But having that chart account security in this case means that, which you'll see in the last slides, you'll see that access is what's kind of limiting that access in the right way, and it doesn't have this like not applicable value or anything kind of strange that you have to kind of pass through to get there. So the next step is really applying it to the users, and this is a pretty quick and easy step. If you have the user set up itself, it's done. If you have the custom role, basically what you're going to want to do is take that user, strip all the other BI roles out of that user. The thing is too, we got to make sure that any of those admin roles really are gone too, because if that has all access in there, like if you have application admin, probably shouldn't have security. But a normal user that would have security probably has a limited number of roles due to the security level that they're in, and therefore stripping all the BI roles out are going to be okay. Applying that custom role to the user, that's really it. And again, just we talked about it in the beginning. Along with that, if you have a BI security set up, it's probably a good idea to set up FSM security as well that mimics the BI security, so that when somebody drills back into FSM and down to the transaction level, that will be also set up, which is not going to allow kind of carte blanche access when BI can only see certain things. Along with that, just as a little side note, that's done a little bit differently. It still builds on the dimensions and hierarchy. However, it actually uses actor context to actually assign those levels. So if you have a need for a user, that same hierarchy that you built the custom BI access for, you can assign that same highest level of the hierarchy on the user, and that user will then have that reduced access. And again, it's by actor context. So just the last couple of slides are kind of what you would end up seeing when you're looking at the BI reporting. So in this case, this is an example of without security restrictions. So this particular user, even though it's an income statement on the report, I click on chart accounts, I can see that I see everything that user could possibly see who's assigned to that particular FEG, right? They're going to see the unused accounts, they're going to see balance sheet, income statement statistics, and everything else that's kind of along with it. So you can kind of drill in anywhere hypothetically and see it. If you go to the next one, this would be an example of a user that actually includes the BI secure BI access for account. So what they see when they click onto that particular dimension is they're only going to see the access that they're allowed to see. If one drills down under net income and then drills all the way to the posting level, they're just going to see that net income information. They don't have access to balance sheet. They don't have access to, I think I turned off the unused transactions as well. So they only see certain things, which would be the same thing would apply in this case for your, departments, your companies, and what have you. You're only going to be allowed to see that, and it's going to default to that information.
Yep, it's a good illustration of security actually taking place in the system and limiting what the user can see. And I think that's really end-to-end what the process is. It seems like a lot of steps, but it really doesn't take all that long to get set up. Definitely reach out to us if you need any assistance with setting up security. Infor has a lot of documentation out there on creating BI security as well. And with that, I'll ask if anyone has any questions on the presentation or about BI security in general.
I don't see anything in the chat, but please feel free to come off mute if you do have a question.
Well, if not, I can turn it back over to you, Brian.
All right. Thanks, Steve and John. Appreciate that. What you're seeing here today is this Coffee with Consultants. If there's any information that we can help you with, we provide a half hour of time with our consultant to discuss any of your Infor needs. So please take advantage of that. It's something that's, I think, unique to this space. And yeah, the knowledge base is here, so please utilize it. So that's it for today's presentation. Again, thank you for attending and enjoy the holiday weekend. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.